I hope you are all doing well during the holidays, and sorry we haven't had as many episodes out. I'm going to try to get on that for the holidays, give you lots of creepy true crime stories. And to start us off with, today we have the Granny Killer. Nannie Doss was born in 1905 in Blue Mountain, Alabama. Her parents were James Hazel and Nancy Hazel. With a brother and 3 sisters, she spent her childhood in poverty. The miserable situation ended up making her studies very difficult and added to the fact that her father forced her to work on the family farm. She practically did not go to school. She could not learn the basics and was considered illiterate. Although Nannie had a hobby of reading romance magazines, imagining her future love life she had under pressure from her father to marry early. At the age of 16, she had to marry Charles Braggs, a man she met at a factory where they both worked. In 4 years, they had 4 daughters. With the marriage going from bad to worse, the husband got into the habit of drinking and smoking routinely. Sometimes, he disappeared for days from home. In 1927, after the birth of their last daughter, 2 of the couple's children died on suspicion of food poisoning. Many believe that Nannie would have killed them. In the face of suspicion, Braggs ran away from home and took his eldest daughter with him, leaving the newborn at home. After a year, he returned home and asked for a divorce. After the separation, the Black Widow returned to her mother's house in the company of her daughters. Braggs later admitted he divorced because he was afraid of Nannie. It was the wisest decision of his life. On today's episode, we delve into the case of the Granny Killer. At age 24, Nannie married Robert Harrelson, an alcoholic with a history of robbery. Even so, the marriage lasted 16 years. Meanwhile, Melvina, Nannie's eldest daughter, got pregnant and ended up giving birth to a premature baby girl of just 7 months. Her mother helped in the birth, but the baby did not resist and ended up dying. Melvina, in the postpartum period, reported having hallucinated and seen her mother sticking a needle in her daughter's head. Florine, the youngest, said that Nannie had simply claimed that her granddaughter was dead, and oddly enough, had a needle in her hands. This fact was never made clear to the daughters, so they began to keep their distance from their mother. One day, Melvina reportedly left her other son, Robert, in Nannie's care and went to visit her father. When she returned, her mother mysteriously gave her the sad news that her son had died. The autopsy concluded that the death was due to asphyxia, but for unknown causes. In 1945, after a Bohemian night commemorating the end of World War II, her husband Robert returned home and raped Nannie. Indignant with the violence suffered, the woman filled an empty whiskey bottle with rat poison and gave it to Robert. Not satisfied, Nannie married a 3rd time to a guy named Arlie Lanning, who, by the way, looked like her ex-husband, an alcoholic and a bohemian. Nannie played the role of the housewife and good woman. However, shortly after the wedding, her husband allegedly died of heart failure, arsenic poisoning. In possession of life insurance money, the woman before leaving North Carolina still murdered Lanning's elderly mother, again, using arsenic. After 2 near simultaneous deaths, Nancy went to her sister Dovey's house. Upon arriving at the residence, she found that Dovey was asleep. She never woke up again. After a few days, the assassin met her 4th husband at a nightclub in Emporia, Kansas, Richard Morton. He, unlike the others, was not an alcoholic, but he was also unfaithful. The 2 began living together, and when Morton's mother moved into her home in 1953, she understood to poison her. After all, the Black Widow liked her privacy. Morton was very sorry for the death of his dear mother. 3 months later, it was he who would lose his life. The 5th and final husband was Samuel Doss, who lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They married in 1953. In the same year, Doss was admitted to the hospital with symptoms of probable flu. However, doctors identified a very serious poisoning in his digestive tract. After a month, he was granted a discharge. On the night of his release, Nannie murdered him at home. She wanted, in a hurry, to withdraw her life insurance policies. It so happens that this time a local doctor suspected the reason why Doss, who had recently been discharged from the hospital, had died. He then requested an autopsy on his body. To her surprise, a frightening amount of arsenic was found in her system. After the death of her 5th husband, Nannie was arrested and questioned by police about the arsenic that had been found in her body. When she remembered what had happened, she initially began to laugh nonstop, which led to her also later becoming known as the Giggling Granny. Nannie had fits of laughter when interrogated by police. During police interrogation, she confessed to killing Samuel Doss because he was too cheap. Then she said she had murdered Arlie and Richard, claiming they were idiots. The confessions did not stop there. She also reported killing her children and grandchildren. She finally said that all she wanted was to be loved, to find true love, like in the books. In saying this, Nannie was reading a romance magazine, which had to be removed to pay attention to the seriousness of her crimes. The bodies of all the poisoned victims were exhumed. All of them found lethal doses of arsenic. Although Nannie clarified her reasons for killing her husbands, she said nothing about her children or grandchildren. The Black Widow had killed her husbands because they were boring and idiots. But what about the children? Police authorities did not reach any conclusions about it. In May 1955, Nannie Doss was put on trial for the death of Samuel Doss. The session took place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Asked about the reason that led to the crimes, she explained that the criminal behavior resulted from an accident suffered in her childhood. The fact would have occurred when she was 7 years old during a train journey. On occasion, Nannie would have crashed her head into a metal bar on the seat in front of her. From the crash came serious blackouts and successive headaches that plagued her throughout her life. However, the explanation was not convincing, and the Black Widow decided to plead guilty on May 17, 1955. Nancy Doss was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her 5th husband. She was never sentenced for the other murders that took place in Alabama, North Carolina, or Kansas. Well, that story is very twisted. So this lady starts killing her children and her grandchildren. I don't know. It was never stated if she did that for insurance money. Obviously, there was no reason for that. She never gave a reason for it. I have to wonder if maybe she had insurance on them, and that is what kind of preceded her to start doing the husband thing. I'm not sure, but wow, to murder your own children and grandchildren, and then murder all of your husbands. And then when you're being interrogated about it, you're reading a romance magazine and not paying attention. And then when you are answering questions, you're laughing about it. That's pretty much the sum up of this story. And it blows my mind. I don't know about you guys, but that was definitely a twisted one.